It has been very warm here so far this season. We have actually only had a hard frost on a couple nights so far, which is very late for where we live. We have still been experiencing some really warm weather during the day here lately, but the forecast is looking cold and rainy for the next couple weeks. That seems more typical for our weather here in Missouri for this time of year. So we decided it would be a good time to get out on one of the last warm and dry days to put our garden to bed for the winter. Our main goal is to get our garlic covered with straw so that it is protected over the winter months, and then we need to pull out all of our pepper and tomato plants and just clean up that area of the garden. That is pretty much the only beds that we don't have something planted or a cover crop planted, so we are going to cover the beds with straw to protect the soil over the winter time. We have big plans for this garden space next season. It is a very big garden, and it will be the biggest garden that we have had on our farm so far. So we're hopeful that next summer we can grow most all of our vegetables that we need for the entire year. This year we only felt behind on our garden, and that is because we recently built on our farm. We have been renting an old farmhouse, and we decided it was finally time to build a home of our own. And the garden space that we previously used had to be removed and graded up to make space for our new building. So not only did we have to establish a new space for a garden this summer, we also just had very limited time with the build project to put forth the effort to maintain a good garden. During the late summer, we shifted our focus from growing vegetables for this year to setting ourselves up for more success next season. So we converted a lot of our beds to cover crops and just focused on building the size beds that we want and making rows and getting things ready to plant crops into next spring. And even despite all of that, we were still able to enjoy some fresh vegetables during the summer, and we have some late fall crops that we're still able to eat fresh now. And we are definitely better set up going into the next growing season. In this week's video, I want to share with you guys how we live simply and affordably here on our farm. I am also going to share more about the house that we built here on the farm over the summertime. It is a bit unconventional, but it works great for our season of life, and we had a lot of reasons why we chose to build what we built. My family is definitely a very outside focused family. Living here on the farm, we spend most of our daylight hours outside. We thrive off of building our big gardens and taking care of our animals, and our goals are definitely focused on the farm and what we can do with this land. So in this season, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for us to pour a lot of our money into a forever home. That is something that we eventually plan and hope to do and build that right here on the farm. But for now, we are living very comfortably inside of a shed that we built. We finished off at 1,000 square feet of living quarters. And I want to explain more about why we chose to do that and why it was a really great decision for our family. For starters this week, I am going to get some chicken bone broth going. That is something that I try to keep on hand this time of year because I need it in so many of the recipes that I make, as well as I just like to feed it to my family during these colder months. And then I plan to make a chicken pot pie with some of those fall garden vegetables later on in the week, and I'll use the bone broth for that. I also have a few little home projects that I'm going to be working on and some farm chores to get to. So as I show you guys all of that, I'm also going to be sharing with you a little bit more about our journey with getting moved up here to the farm and living out that simple country lifestyle that we wanted for our family. As I mentioned earlier, we made a living quarters inside of a shed, and in our area, people refer to them as a shouse. I've also seen them on Pinterest called barndominiums. So it's definitely becoming a much more popular idea. So this probably isn't the first time you've heard or seen someone live in one. You may even live in one yourself. But the goal with ours was to keep the living quarters very simple. So that way, when we go to build our actual house someday, it's not like we have two houses here on the farm. This space is more of an actual living quarters within the shed. I know some people who have built forever homes out of a house or barndominium, and I think they're great. That just really wasn't our plan for this home. We definitely built this with our long-term plan in mind, but also to be comfortable in the short term. Our space is 1,000 square feet, so not a tiny home, but certainly not a big house by any stretch. And when designing our living space, I knew I would have to really utilize the living space to get all of what we need to live comfortably within that small space. But having this outside shop area truly makes it not feel small at all, because we have essentially a big area for storage or overflow items that don't necessarily need to be inside our house. So it's not like living in a tiny home or a camper or anything like that, because we still have a lot of square footage under roof. It's just the actual living part of this space is pretty small compared to the rest of the building. We knew that we wanted to get moved out to the farm pretty quickly, so this allowed us to build a shed that we always knew we wanted here on the farm eventually, but we just built the shed a little bit bigger than we probably would have, so that way it could accommodate for the living space. And if or when we decide to go and build our actual home, this will be a great space to continue to build our business in, and we would also have extra space for family members or people that would want to come and stay at the farm. I am finally getting around to catching up on making my own laundry soap again. So this is something that I try to keep on hand. I prefer to make my laundry soap on my own just because, for one, it's a lot cheaper because you can make a big bucket for very little cost. And I also just like to know the ingredients that are in the detergent. But during the summertime and early fall, when we were just so busy, I ran out of the last supply that I had made, so I just been buying laundry detergent, which isn't that big of a deal. But now that I have a little bit more time, I decided to take that time to make my own again. And as I am making it, I am showing you guys the most useful space in our living quarters. So this little mudroom gets a bunch of traffic, especially with dirty boots on, because I put this big old slop sink in here. There is a little half bath, and then obviously our washer and dryer. So I wanted this space right off of our shop, so that way you could come in the middle of chores. There would be a restroom to use, this big slop sink to wash your hands in, and it's just sort of like a drop zone, especially now with the kids. I find myself needing to bring stuff in the house, bring stuff out of the house. So I kind of just put everything in here, and then I can come back and forth with my muddy boots on and just not worry about it. This is the space that I always tell my dad or my husband, like, you can come in, don't have to take your boots off, use the restroom, wash your hands, warm up, whatever you need to do, and not worry about making the space dirty, because that is really why I design this space. I needed a drop zone area. I think they're probably handy in every house, but it's especially handy in a home on a farm to have an area like this. And going into wintertime, I know it's going to be even more handy with all of our coats and boots and potentially wet clothes, just to have this area as a drop zone before going into the rest of our home. I always say if we build an actual house, because in the short time that we lived here, I realized just how handy living in the shed is. I did put a lot of thought into the functionality of this building as far as the location of it on the farm, and even with the basic layout with the doors and the shop entrance. Especially in this season of littles, being able to come in and out easily is important because there's always just so much stuff that I have to remember to bring with me just to go out to do the chores. When you live on a farm or a homestead, the chores are never really done, so being able to go in and out often throughout the day is really important. It allows me to be able to structure my day in between outside chores or inside cooking and taking care of the home. Instead of doing everything in one big block of time, I can go back and forth. The chores have really slowed down though, and basically the only thing we have to do in this season is take care of our cattle. Besides the laying hens, they are the only animals that we keep through the winter time. So we have a cow-calf herd, so that means we maintain a mama cow herd for breeding stock. So these cows raise babies every year. Then those babies are what we raise for selling meat, or we'll keep some of the babies as replacement breeding stock as some of our cows get older. And what I'm doing now is moving their mineral feeder, and I'm very hesitant to pick one of these up because a lot of time mice will like to get under them, so it always just freaks me out when I pick it up and a mouse comes running out. So that's why I always look so hesitant. But right now, we are basically just rotationally grazing our cattle around through the winter months. Rotational grazing is very important to our operation, so even during the winter time, we move the cattle often. This year, though, we won't graze as long into the winter months as we've had before, and that's because we had a drought late summer into the fall here. So our pastures didn't grow as much grass this season as normal, but for now, our cows are still happily grazing, and soon we'll start feeding them some hay out on pasture for the wintertime. Fortunately, we were able to invest in a lot of frost-free drinkers around our farm, so now we have the flexibility to decide what pastures we can leave our cows on during the winter months. That was something we invested in a few years ago because during the wintertime we were just very limited on where all the cows could go, and it was really hindering how we wanted to run our operation. So now I just have to move them to a new section of pasture and then open up that drinker and just make sure that they have plenty of mineral, and then they will thrive out here on pasture for a few more weeks before we start setting in to feed hay for the winter time. The rain set in this afternoon, so I'm finally getting back to the kitchen to put together a chicken pot pie recipe using that chicken bone broth that I made earlier this week. I've just had it simmering on slow cook on my counter. I usually try to keep bone broth going pretty regularly this time of year, and now I'll just run it through some cheesecloth into these glass jars and use what I need for my recipe tonight, and then I'll store the other jar in the refrigerator or even the freezer if I don't think I'll get to it right away. I want to talk more about our simple little living quarters here, and if you've been watching my videos for a little while, you probably noticed some small changes in our kitchen. We moved in as soon as we had enough of the construction done to live comfortably here, So there's still a lot of things undone in our little home, so I am slowly decorating each space and making it more homey. We knew when we moved in during the summertime we would go a long time without all those little touches that makes a space feel more like home. I am also trying to keep things very low budget, so I'm not in a hurry to just go out and buy things. I'm trying to thrift as much as I can for decorations. We did add some beadboard to give the kitchen more texture and to break up the white walls, and I really love the country feel that brought to this space. I decided to paint it the same color that I have my cabinets, which is this off-white creamy color. It's called Steamed Milk by Sharon Williams, and it really is the feel I was going for. I'm happy with that paint color a lot. I'm trying to make this little kitchen functional but also cute. I hung a pot rail above the stove, so I plan to go out and find some copper pots at an antique store. I also plan to do some open shelving above the dishwasher. I purchased some walnut boards from Lowe's and stained them, but I'm not really happy with how that stain looks. So I'm still on the search for some good lumber to do my open shelving with, but so far I haven't really found the right lumber to do that yet. I really want to add some warmth and more color into this kitchen, so I'm holding out. I'm just trying to see if I can come up with exactly what I'm looking for before we mount anything to the wall. We also have a pretty decent sized pantry in our kitchen, and I'm really looking forward to putting shelving and some countertops in there. With so much from scratch cooking and then canning fresh vegetables from our garden, I knew I would need this extra space in the kitchen. So hopefully this winter we'll get around to mounting all of our shelves and countertops for that space. I know that this small living space will slowly become more homey as I tackle each one of these little home projects that I have in mind and collect decor along the way. I would not consider myself someone who loves interior decorating, but I am having fun with this, and I'm really seeing the value in curating a space to feel more like home. Our biggest goals here on our farm is to create a sustainable and profitable business from our small amount of acreage, so that's something that we have poured a lot into. When it came to designing and planning out our home, we both felt that the best way to stick to our goals was to really simplify our house plans and build the shed and then finish off living quarters on the inside so that we could save money and just focus on our long-term business goals instead of building a forever house right away. While our family is small and in this season, we are all living very comfortably and cozy in this house. We spend most of our time dreaming about what we can do outside on the land, and all of these home projects are just little things that we're going to knock out along the way to just slowly make this space more comfortable and suit it for our family. We are just slowing down in this winter season and putting some effort into this home right now. I know once spring and summer come along, wherever we're at is where we'll leave off until next winter. It's the shorter days and longer evenings that's allowing us to spend more time inside, and while we are really enjoying this time, we know once the winter starts to feel long, we'll be longing for those summer days again of just being outside and doing all the things that we enjoy the most. But for now, we're enjoying our time inside in our simple little house on the farm. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks so much for following along. I can't wait to share more.